sitting over here, and I'm fucking thinking, and I had a flash of my mind. Here you are, you can't get your money from Larry, and you're not going to. I hate to fucking disillusion you. This cocksucker, and what kind of a fucking guy? He couldn't wait for John to die to take the car.
So here's the proof, huh? Give the story because it's better than the truth, huh? Allegories will keep between me and you, huh? We get coins, never scraps. See this a Bitcoin getting cat. So here's the proof, huh? Give the story because it's better than the truth, huh? Allegories will keep between me and you, huh? We get coins, never scraps. See this a Bitcoin getting cat. So join, started federal, grabbed a Colombo, see proof of work, I made it legible. Move out to cyber, was keeping crimes off of the web for you. Started a special group, yeah, I went private. Fell in love with Bitcoin and started mining. That's when I started shining. Getting green, dropping gems. Rocking the comic club, got them sent. They laugh, popping limbs. Give them life, here's the boost. Gotta put in the work, here's the proof. So here's the proof, huh? Give the story because it's better than the truth, huh? Allegories will keep between me and you, huh? We get coins, never scraps. See this a Bitcoin getting cat. So here's the proof, huh? Give the story because it's better than the truth, huh? Allegories will keep between me and you, huh? We get coins, never scraps. See this a Bitcoin getting cat. So join, get it back.
Don't fucking talk to me next time! You're gonna kill me! Please! Oh, you worried about them now? They're gonna kill me!
Here we are, episode 4, Vinny's Proof of Work podcast. I wanted to do a quick video this evening on the back end of a record-setting Bitcoin seizure on the part of Department of Justice, specifically IRS, FBI, and HSI, I believe. A massive, massive seizure of what is valued at approximately $3.6 billion worth of this stuff, Bitcoin. There you go. Here's the hard version of it that in the early days people actually thought was a Bitcoin, just a coin. That happened a couple of days ago, but reported on today, the arrest of 2 individuals. A woman named Heather Morgan and her husband, Ilya Dutch Lichtenstein, Russian U.S. nationals residing in, of course, New York City, who are responsible allegedly for the hack of a Bitcoin exchange back in 2016. This was a notorious hack that occurred way back in 2016, where I think it was at the total number of Bitcoin was what, 19,000. Let's see, 119,754 Bitcoin, which was valued at a mere 71 million back in 2016. And they hodled, credit to them, they hodled until 2022, where it's now valued at over, according to the complaint, $4.5 billion. I know that there's some reporting is 3.6, but the complaint and the statement of facts in support of the complaint listed as valued at $4.5 billion as of February 2022. And Bitcoin's on the rise. So Bitcoin's at 40. Let's see, what is it up to? It's at 44,251 right now. So the interesting part about this story is, of course, how did they get caught? Who are these people? Had they get away with it for so many years? And the question I always hear is, isn't Bitcoin anonymous? How did they find these people if Bitcoin's truly anonymous? Before we get into the how and the what and where they went wrong and some of the discussion around that, somebody, I forget who this was, Twitter person, let me know that the female, the wife in this case, was an aspiring rapper, or at least, I don't know, had a goofy video. So check this out. I think I'm going to add this to my intro in case my intro gets boring. Let's take a look at this bad boy. Showing off her inverse twerk. At dark she come alert. Like beer, inky ooch third. Beer, inky ooch third. Turkish Martha Stewart. Turkish Martha Stewart. Turkish Martha Stewart. Yeah, not the brains of the operation. Clearly, this woman That's the kind of dance you can only do when you have 4.5 billion in Bitcoin sitting somewhere that you think you're going to get away with it. That is really horrible, that video. And I'm not sure what's with all the splooge sounds. I don't know if you can hear that. Not sure what what that's all about. Yeah, I'm not going to make you watch that twice, but yeah, that's the wife. Apparently, that's what's being reported online. That's the wife, Free Spirit. So clearly not the brains of the operation. I don't fashion her as somebody with some technical skills. So there's a couple parts to this case and how it happened. Of course, back in 2016, they gained unauthorized access to a Bitcoin exchange. Was it Bitfinex? Let me read it in here. The name is eluding me right now. Nonetheless, they gained unauthorized access to the exchange and were able to initiate like some 2,000 plus Bitcoin transfers. And this is why there's going to be an episode we're actually shooting later this week on Thursday with none other than Paul Verzi and another guest to talk about a Bitcoin beginner show. So this is very topical and timely that this came up. But one of the things we're going to talk about is, of course, what is the downside of keeping your coin on an exchange? What's the upside and what's the downside? There's a big downside. The downside is you're relying on the exchange to provide security for your crypto. And so that if someone were to gain unauthorized access to the exchange, like the back end of the exchange, or just your account, but spearfish attack on you, your account isn't secured properly, they gain access and able to initiate transfers. There's not much you can do. So a lot of people do it because they feel comfortable. It sort of feels like having a bank account. But the downside is that if someone were to gain access, they can move tremendous amounts of Bitcoin. The most notorious prior to this hack was the Mt. Gox hack, which is an investigation I led back when I was at the Bureau, where there was something like, what was the total number of tens of millions? I'm drawing a blank on the amount at the time. Now would be definitely billions of dollars that were stolen in an alleged hack. And there was a lot of suspicions around whether it was even a hack or not. But regardless, keeping your coin on an exchange runs that risk. So they were hacked back in 2016. These two or someone they knew, and we don't want to jump to conclusion that these are the same people that actually had the skills to gain the access. They could have been the people that were just received the money for whatever reason or played a different role in it. But they gained access, moved 71 million worth of Bitcoin off, and then it sat there for around 8 months, and was sitting there in a private wallet, meaning it was moved off the exchange to a wallet that was self-custody wallet that is very, very secure in terms of, is it safe from anyone being able to get to it? When you move money to a private wallet, there's very little that can be done to determine who owns that wallet. If it's a brand new wallet that's created, it's a fresh address, it has no history to it. It's not like generating an email address that's connected to all sorts of things like your IP address and maybe truthful username information, those user agent strings connected with your browser that'll be logged. None of that happens when you create a Bitcoin wallet. When you create a Bitcoin wallet, it's fresh and clean. It doesn't register with anything. It generates that address using a mathematical formula that doesn't even need to be connected to the internet. So when you move that coin, what they did was they moved that coin, all 120,000 coins, to that address, and then it sat there safe for a while. The problem comes, and this is where Bitcoin becomes highly non-anonymous, highly attributable, is when you try to take that Bitcoin and use it for anything, IRL in real life. When you try to buy something with it, you're going to run into KYC, know your customer issues left and right. And the US government has a ton of these things around virtually anything. It's transparent, so we don't often think about it or see it, but it is. So if you were to, let's say, try to use that Bitcoin, and let's pretend for a moment you could take that Bitcoin and go buy a car with it directly, right, through Tesla. I knew somebody way back in 2013 that bought a Tesla with Bitcoin. When you go buy a car with Bitcoin, you're kidding yourself if you don't think that Tesla is going to take information such as photocopies of your license, and maybe pieces of mail, or maybe backup bank accounts that you can prove that you own, legitimate bank accounts. All that stuff's going to be documented. You can't go buy a car in Bitcoin and just walk in with your wallet on your phone, make a transfer, and they throw you the keys and walk out. Same thing with a house. Same thing with gift cards. Same thing with phone cards. Same thing with prepaid Visa cards. All of that stuff requires you, when you register to use it, to dump in real information. And so you're leaving a trail then that's going to show from the Bitcoin to those services or to those products, whatever you're buying. So they ran into the predictable problem, which is they were sitting on this fortune and they had no real way to spend it. And so if you read through the statement of facts that was provided by Department of Justice in support of the arrest of these two individuals, what you learn is that they fell into the very predictable trap of trying to launder the money through various services or exchanges to try to then get the money out clean on the other end, and assumed probably at this point that nobody was looking. And it reminds me of the I should have pulled it up, but the Hans Gruber quote from Die Hard 1, where at the very end of the movie, you remember John McClane walks in, he's got the gun taped to his back, which I never understood how that tape would work with all the sweat and everything, grease and oil, but he's got the gun taped to his back and he's like, Hans. And then he's like, why'd you have to nuke the building? I think Hans says, when you steal $600, you can just run and hide. When you steal 600 million, they will look for you. And when you steal that much Bitcoin, somebody is going to take it upon themselves to look at that wallet, because the wallet that they moved the money to from the exchange is public. It's on the blockchain. There are records from the exchange that was hacked that are going to very clearly show that all the accounts, all the wallets, the hot wallets that they were moving that coin from point A to point B, it's no mystery where it went. And, they cite it in here, the first 6 characters, it's like 313 something. So they knew that wallet. So, all you have to do is watch that on the blockchain. And then the minute you start to see those funds move as an agent, you know that you have a potential lead there that you can now say, okay, well, where could this have gone that would make sense? Now, if he just transfers it from one person to another person, let's say he transferred $100,000 from one anonymous wallet to another, it's not really a great lead. Now, that person could get arrested at some point. That wallet could be found. They can interview that person. He could say, yeah, I know who sent me that 100,000. It was Joe Schmo. And now you have a great lead. But other than that, there's nobody you can subpoena or serve a search warrant on. And that's where the government and the Bureau and the IRS, and kudos to the IRS, the actual agent who swore this out was an IRS agent. That's where the Bureau's reach, the FBI's reach is very, very vast, because they have process in place for every state, obviously, every city in every state, and also many, many countries. So once you start moving that Bitcoin to exchanges, and there's a way that the government can kind of sort of see that. There's services out there that can look at exchanges like receiving wallets and say, oh, this receiving wallet we believe belongs to Coinbase, or this belongs to Gemini, or this belongs to whomever. And so the Bureau then can take that information and serve a subpoena on those exchanges very easily and say, we need all information connected to this address. Now, I don't want to make it seem that simple. It's not like you're going to go to that exchange and register it in your true name. But it's one step closer to where you're moving the money to that eventually will be in your true name, because the only way you're going to get to use that money is eventually you're going to have to reduce it to cash. That's where we are now. Maybe in the future, not maybe, absolutely in the future, Bitcoin's not going to have to leave the blockchain. You're going to be able to make purchases regularly, but those purchases are not going to be anonymous either, for a lot of different reasons, just because the people are going to reuse wallets over and over. There's going to be a lot more analysis of the blockchain. And when you buy something like a house in Bitcoin, like I said, they're not going to just take your Bitcoin. They're going to do all the KYC stuff that they would do for the bank and then some. But as it stands right now, you have to get that out as cash. So now you have the money, you've hacked the exchange, and now you've moved it to your private wallet. And now you're sitting there on 71 million, and you're like, we're not going to touch it. and then the price starts going up, and now it's 100 million, worth 100 million, worth 200 million. I can only imagine the joy. I mean, you know, you're sitting on this thing, and now it's worth 4.5 billion. This is like a Twilight Zone episode where, you know, the devil's just tempting you. Like you have like more wealth than 99.999% of the planet combined, you know, most people on the planet combined. And here you are that you can't do anything with it. So they began to move it. They moved it to another private wallet. And I believe they moved it to AlphaBay, which is, you know, I've lost track of a lot of these dark markets since I left. AlphaBay is a monster dark market on tour. It's was around right after Silk Road came into existence. There was a lot of other dark markets that popped up. Like AlphaBay was a big one. I think there was like, oh man, Evolution. I don't remember the names. There was probably about 6 or 7 pretty big markets that came up. Most of them fell apart as a result of exit scams where the owners of the dark markets ran them for a while and then just stole everyone's money that was in escrow and bounced. And they were probably the smartest ones because a lot of those people were really hard to catch. So they moved this money, some of it, to AlphaBay. And the reason people do that is they'll send it to AlphaBay and then they withdraw it in pieces. And they've now used the organization as a money laundering service. Sometimes these markets actually offered that service directly, or they claim to that they tumbled the Bitcoin, so they would move the Bitcoin around for you, blah, blah, blah. A lot of times they were full of shit. They just said this, and we found out later through investigations when we did these seizures that there really wasn't a proper tumbling process. But even if you move a Bitcoin, let's say, over to an exchange, and then a month later you withdraw Bitcoin, it's not like your Bitcoin is sitting on a shelf and they give you back the same Bitcoin. It gets dumped into, you know, the lot. It gets dumped into their wallets. And then when you withdraw it, it just withdraws a commensurate amount of what you put in. Same as if you went to a bank. If you went to Chase Manhattan Bank and deposited $1,000 and then a month later took out $1,000, it's not the same bills. It's not the same $10, $100 bills you gave in. You can't say, hey, where's the serial numbers don't match? And that's a great way to launder money. You give it to someone and you take it out, much like a casino. You go in and you get chips, and then at the end of the night, you cash out. They're not giving you back the same money. The interesting part is that they were able to, they don't really say how they knew this, but in the statement, they list that this was one of the things that they were able to track, that they saw the money move to AlphaBay. Now, it's not uncommon that law enforcement through this blockchain analysis can say, hey, this is an address we think is associated with AlphaBay, and it's fairly reliable when they do that. What's interesting to me is how they were able to see it come back out and also know. And my guess is they didn't know that until after the fact, until they found some of these other things, and now they're backtracking the analysis. So in other words, they didn't know what they were looking at the time, but once they figured out who these people are, then the jig's up. It's completely de-anonymized now, and now you can look and say, okay, let's this wallet had this transaction. It went to an AlphaBay. Oh, we did see almost the exact amount come out a month later. Let's do additional analysis. Oh yeah, that looks like it might be an AlphaBay owned address as well. And so my guess is they kind of pieced that together after the fact. But that's not what got them, I don't think. What got them was that they began to move the money to a bunch of different other exchanges around the globe. They began to send pieces of this. And by all accounts, it wasn't like, you know, they weren't moving hundreds of millions. They were moving, relatively speaking, small amounts. But enough that they were moving it to these other exchanges. And so the minute that they saw, okay, here's the hack happens, the money's moved to a private wallet, a portion goes to AlphaBay. Let's assume that's off the radar and they can't really see beyond that, but they think it's AlphaBay. But, you know, it's not like they have access. They can't serve AlphaBay with a subpoena, right? That's a whole other conversation of how you de-anonymize Tor hidden services, but it's not easy. And let's assume that was dark for a while. They did move some to these other addresses, and doing that blockchain analysis, my guess is that it revealed that those addresses were potentially associated with exchanges around the world where, through the MLAT process, Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty that we used all the time at the Bureau and cyber, in other areas, but I used it in cyber, where you can there's an agreement, an arrangement between the United States government and most other friendly nations where we can figure out a way to translate our version of, probable cause and their version of whatever they call it to get what we need. So if we want a search warrant executed, we can comply with their requirements and kind of fit it together to say, all right, well, here's what you need to satisfy these requirements. And then through this mutual legal assistance treaty, the MLAT process, you can get that information. And so what they started to do was they started to, through that process, my guess, it doesn't say specifically in here, but that's the only way that really happens, is they started to get information from these exchanges about these accounts. And what they noticed is with a bunch of accounts, they had moved money in, let's say $100,000 on one instance. And the organization, as the requirements on these exchanges became more strict, because in the heyday of this, exchanges it was the total Wild West. They were doing no due diligence, no know your customer, no anti-money laundering. They were just taking people's money with an email address. But things had changed a lot since 2016, and a lot of these exchanges, reading between the lines in here, began to write their customers to say, hey, we don't have a lot of information on you. We want to make sure we know who you are. So please provide a driver's license, a passport photo, mail. And what they found by doing this is that a lot of people were not responding. So they seized and froze those accounts. And this happened several times with this transfer of this money. So in other words, they followed this to several exchanges. When they reached out to the exchange and said, hey, can you tell us about this account? They were like, yeah, funny you should ask. They never responded to our request for identification. So we froze their account. And they're like, well, that's a pretty good sign that money was illicit, because who would leave $115,000 sitting on an exchange? And the more that they checked into it, the more that they found that that was a common theme with a lot of exchanges, where these people had just abandoned the money sitting there. So it's a very good indication that you're dealing with the right people, or at least people dealing with ill-gotten gains, with funds that were stolen. And so here, I'm going to throw this up on the screen here. They graphed out, and they do this a couple of times in this statement, where they're showing the theft of the Bitcoin up here on top, and then they're showing that it went to the virtual currency exchange. That's what VCE equals means, and virtual currency exchange 1 and virtual currency exchange 4. You can see right here, if I zoom in here, this is the private wallet they're referring to. So 1CGA4S. So it's got stolen up here. Went to their private wallet here. Then they moved it to the AlphaBay market, a portion of it, which then ended up at virtual currency exchange 1. And some of it from that wallet also went to virtual currency exchange 4. Then from there, and I'll try to zoom in, what they're saying is that it went to several, there were several accounts. One of the things they note here, this is blurry. It's not my screen. It's just the document they provided. But what they're showing you is that the exchanges, they registered with accounts on those exchanges using an email address from, I think they said a few times, an Indian hosted, as in India, hosted email address that they were clearly able to get information from, because based on those email addresses, let's see, where is it? Here you go. Based on those email addresses, they were able to get identifying information that linked back to their true identity, probably through IP addresses used to register those accounts. We have here the Bitcoin being stolen here, 1,119 plus Bitcoin being stolen, sent to this private wallet here, the 1CGA4. And then from there, it was sent to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different AlphaBay accounts. And then from those AlphaBay accounts, it was sent to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different virtual exchange accounts, because they thought it was laundered at that point. They had registered on those virtual exchange accounts using an Indian email address, which was not truly anonymous. And they were able to get information from those exchanges clearly related to the email address, and related to the information from the exchange about the email address. That gave them the email address, and then they found out who the email provider was, reading between the lines again, and were able to get attributable information from the email provider as to probably true IP addresses and other specific information about who they were, and that ultimately led. Then at that point, you're done, because at that point, once they filed that money back to an exchange, and your next step is to then go buy real goods. You could see here they ended up, in several instances using the money to buy Walmart. They went to Walmart in New York, Uber. They were probably bought gift cards for Uber, hotels.com, PlayStation, all that stuff. And as they explain here, $500 gift card, Walmart, all that stuff was done in their true name. So at that point, they're able to know who they were. So the money went from completely anonymous to then you purchasing, a gift card for PlayStation or Uber gift card that was in your name. Now the interesting thing is, well, so what? So now they know who you are, and they could arrest you because you're definitely, or at least you're going to be in deep trouble, because you have to explain how it is that you were in possession of Bitcoin that was then used to buy these things. But that's not the worst part. The worst part of all this was that was a very small percentage of the 4.5 billion. I would argue that was probably under $1 million worth based on what I read in here. They didn't buy anything massive. The worst part is they were able to transfer the Bitcoin out. Originally, when I read this, I assumed that they had cooperated and that the two defendants, the husband and wife team, must have consented and transferred the money out as part of the beginnings of a cooperation agreement. That was not the case. How they got to that was they were able to gain access to the defendant's cloud account. They don't really say in here which one, but let's assume it's Google or Microsoft. And within the cloud account, he had a host of encrypted files in there. They were able to decrypt some of those files, most notably an Excel sheet which contained the public-private key combination pairs for 2,000 wallets, which held the $4.5 billion. This is a monumental, boneheaded move, because you don't host. This is, I pause there because this isn't intended to be, guidance on how to be a criminal. It's just my commentary on, lack of common sense, a lack of understanding of how law enforcement works on a lot of these people's parts that leads to this stuff. You don't put those private keys on the cloud because someone else could gain access into that account. And even though the file was encrypted, I'm guessing this was encrypted through the Excel file itself, or using some other weak encryption algorithm or a weak password. And they were either able to break the encryption or brute force the encryption and get in, because I assure you, the FBI does not have, a quantum computer that they can use to reverse SHA 256 and get into your encrypted files. That's not how this works. So if he had taken that, for example, and had just taken those private keys and put them on, let's say, a thumb drive, for example, and, buried it in his backyard, this could be billions of dollars that could never be recovered, meaning at least these idiots would have had something to offer. When we used to arrest wise guys, the big part of their cooperation was what they could offer us. We didn't need them necessarily to confess to the crime that we were charging them with. We already did all the work for that. We didn't really need that. But if you can give me 2, 3, 4 bodies, yeah, that's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in you fast forwarding my investigation, 2 years, by telling me I'll take you to some bodies buried out in, Farmingdale. So the fact that they were able to move the funds out is hysterical to me, because by the time they arrested these dopes, they might have even known, if they were keeping track of any of those addresses, that the money was gone, and they might have thought, oh my God, we got hacked, which would have been very apropos to have hackers who stole this money all of a sudden be like, oh my God, we've been hacked. We've lost $4.5 billion. But even if they didn't know that, and when they got arrested and said to the agents, well, I can tell you where the money is, the agents are probably like, we already know, it's already gone. We already seized it. Because that's the thing about Bitcoin, is that they didn't, they can go in once they had those private keys. All they needed was the authority from a judge to seize it, and they got that lickety split based on the supporting facts, and they were able to move that money out without knocking on a door, going to a bank. I mean, we used to bust into safety deposit boxes on the organized crime side with hundreds of thousands of dollars of cash, and that's the amazing part about Bitcoin is this was 4.5 billion, and it was moved in a fraction of a second from their wallets to a government-controlled wallet, and it's gone. So again, I get this a lot when other cases come up. I won't mention the name because I get shit every single time, but other people who are otherwise really intelligent making really dumb moves, and oh my God, how am I going to believe they'd be that stupid? Well, here's yet another example of somebody who was smart enough to get away with the heist. They were smart enough to get in, to steal the money, to go undetected for how many years? 5 years, going on 6 years, and then mess up in part because they moved the money through exchanges, not realizing that those email addresses they were using were attributable, and moving it through a dark net market, AlphaBay, not realizing that at some point could be attributable, and most notably moving it the private keys onto an exchange that was subject to a U.S. an email provider, a cloud-based provider, Google, let's say, moving it over to your Google Cloud, not realizing that the government can get in and out of your Google Cloud. It's a joke. I mean, U.S. companies, are compelled to comply. They can't say no to a search warrant. If it's signed and everything's in order, those companies have no choice. Not like if you're using a Ukrainian-based cloud service. Yeah, good luck. It's a lot more difficult for the U.S. to do something about that than it is for Google or OneDrive or Microsoft. So that was what did them in the end. And then once that money's gone, not only did those private keys exist, there was Excel sheets and organization, just like another guy that I had something to do with that had login information. So for those email accounts, there was a spreadsheet on this guy's cloud drive which showed his username and login password, I believe, for all of these different Indian-based email accounts that they were using. In addition to that, I believe it also said in there that he had a spreadsheet that noted those accounts that I mentioned earlier where the funds were seized or abandoned. He had a note next to that. So he would say, blah, 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 exchange, and then, $125,000, and then frozen was listed next to it to note that account's been frozen. And unless he provides information as to who he is, then that money's gone forever. So again, the digital stuff blows people's mind because it goes from very anonymous to very de-anonymized very, very quickly. And unlike traditional crime, when it becomes non-anonymous, it's digital. It's all there. It's more than we ever would get on the organized crime side to that extent, because those guys never kept records like that. And the digital trail that's left when you're moving this Bitcoin around, the blockchain is forever. It's immutable. The information at these exchanges that they're getting is there for a very long time, and they have access to that. IP addresses, specifics about your device connecting from, commonalities between IP addresses that were used at the time to register those Indian email addresses and your legitimate bank account you connected to on the same day, sharing that IP because you didn't disconnect that VPN, let's say. Those things all matter, and they're not like witness accounts or, talking to people on the street that 5 years later, their recollection's gone. They're all ones and zeros. They're there forever. So once they get that stuff, it's easy to start piecing that trail back together. So that's one of the things reading through this that was really interesting to me. And I think I saw a lot of people on Twitter tonight, talking about that. So I want to take a chance to jump in and give my 2 cents. I'll definitely follow this story and put any questions or comments you have in there, and make sure you subscribe. I keep forgetting to say that, but I know that's important. Like and subscribe if you like these types of videos. If you're a Bitcoin enthusiast like myself and are passionate about it and want me to make more videos about these types of things and whatever, let me know. And I will talk to everybody soon. Have a good night. Take care.
Martha Stewart, keep gun up in her skirt. Been trapping with dessert. Garn poppy from the dirt. Rebellious young Turk. Con basics with a Burke. Showing off her inverse twerk. A dark she come along.